control of the chamber. Here to discuss this further is Congressman Mark Green, who is now chair of the House Homeland Security Committee. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being on the show.
Congratulations on your new role. My first question is, what should Americans expect to see with you chairing the House Homeland Security Committee, especially with regard to the southern border crisis happening under Biden's watch?
Sure. Well, obviously, my three priorities are, of course, the southern border. Our second priority is the cyber border. And then I think the third thing we've got to really focus on from an operational level is restructuring and better resourcing DHS. Now, some of that obviously reflects back on the southern border. For example, we need more drug interdiction resources, technology stuff. We need better sensors at the crossing sites, things like that. We also have to honestly get more Customs and Border Patrol individuals in there. We've got to better support the CBP. They need some retention bonuses and hiring bonuses, fix the pipeline of the recruiting and hiring processes. We also have to push back against this administration. Look, President Biden and Mayorkas, every single thing they have done is just to speed people into the country. Really about 5 million people since he's been president. If you count the gotaways, it's insanity. So holding some oversight on their dereliction of duty of enforcing the laws, looking at the fentanyl crisis in a way that sheds light to all of the American people about what's going on. We're going to look at some of the things like costs that you don't really think about when you think about migration. For example, uncompensated health care. If you look at hospitals on the border, you look at hospitals all across the country, there's been a massive increase in uncompensated care. Well, that just gets handed over to other people who go to the hospital who wind up having to pay for that stuff. So there's a lot of work to do on oversight.
And you've previously called on DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas to resign. Now, Biden, he made his trip to the border for the first time since taking office on Sunday. And since then, a group of bipartisan senators participated in a border roundtable the next day to highlight the immigration crisis. And as you mentioned, especially the amount of fentanyl making its way across the U.S. How do we go about fixing this system?
So the way that cartels have taken control of the southern border is basically you sort of look at your enemy and then you build your plan. What they're doing is they're overwhelming the crossing sites with mass waves of people, right? So what CBP has to do is thin the line in the rural areas. That then allows the cartels to push massive amounts of fentanyl. When I was down in Arizona over the summer, looking at the border, we saw ranchers who shared game camera footage of just waves of people coming through, wearing camouflaged backpacks, carpet shoes so their footprints aren't trackable, and bringing the fentanyl in. So we have to address how the enemy, so to speak, is attacking us. And we can do that in a number of different ways. One, we can have processors, better admin people so that CBP aren't having to do the admin work. That puts them back on the border where they can stop the gotaways, so they can stop the people that are coming through like that. There's also technology that will advance that with better fiber optics and cameras along the wall and build the wall, those kinds of things. We can insist on that if we're going to pass the budget. So those are the things. That's just a few examples. I mean, the list is incredibly long.
And speaking of borders, a topic you touched upon is the need to emphasize America's cyber border. And you cited how back in 2018, cyber attacks cost the federal government nearly $14 billion. How will you use your position as chair of the House Homeland Security Committee to mitigate this issue?
So when it comes to cyber, there are some requirements that we need to add to our current law, our current code, to address how businesses interact with the .gov domain. So that's perhaps one of the low-hanging fruit, pieces of low-hanging fruit, and just make sure that, one, we're not creating an arduous process for business. I mean, we don't want the commerce in our country to slow down because we put some arduous requirement. But you look at the SolarWinds hack, it probably cost, the guess is that it cost $100 billion between government's losses and private sector losses. So just simple things like that can help us very easily address the hacking. Now, the IP theft, this is interdepartmental, and it's going to require task forces, much like we do with the narcotics guys. We have Jayada South down in Key West, that they command a joint task force of DOD, DOJ, and DHS. Well, we need joint task forces managing the cyber issues, because we've got Cybercom under DOD that are doing sort of the offensive cyber, and then you've got CISA, and then parts of energy and commerce and treasury that are all handling this cyber thing. So I really think we're going to need some joint agency task forces directed at cyber.
And lastly, GOP lawmakers have sounded the alarm about the classified documents from Biden's time as vice president being found at the Penn Biden Center last November. What's your reaction to these findings?
I think the thing that frustrates me the most is just the fact that they knew about it before the election. They didn't say anything, kept it secret. It had to be leaked by a reporter. Meanwhile, they're prosecuting the former president for having it at his residence, right? Now the Biden top secret TSSCI information that he had in his stuff was open to the public. I mean, it was at a university. People could get access to it. It's also very interesting that was built with Chinese donations. But here's the access to this highly classified information. And the DOD or the DOJ seems to be doing nothing or very little about it. So, but the thing that really, angered me is just that they kept it secret, and they continued to prosecute the president, the former president, at the same time. Just egregious. That's like Soviet Union era stuff.
And we've already heard from some of the new chairs of the Judiciary Oversight and Intelligence Committees saying that they will investigate this further. It will be interesting to see what comes about this. Again, Congressman Mark Green, the new chair of the House Homeland Security Committee on GOP priorities in this new Congress. Thank you so much again for your time.
Thanks for having me.